group, which we kind of just opened up for holidays, really, and it's just kind of getting started basically. And it is a working group, so it's just kind of for folks who really want to roll up their sleeves and take on the task of understanding what the best practices would be, put that into a protocol and into language that we use to go to the ballot, go to our legislators, etc. So basically, we might, right now, everything's going well, but if anything, if we get too much sound, we'll mute people. Otherwise, since we just have a few people on right now, we will go ahead and just have everyone's line open, but we are going to put some things up on the screen here in a minute to reach the goals of our meeting, which is to talk about our basic idea and concept, the introduction, the strategy to that, to review our outline, to make sure that we have everything people think should be on there, and if they have some issues with things that are on there. So we'll discuss all of that as we kind of move through the outline kind of quickly in a minute. And we'll also look at one of the early parts of the outline, a premise of election. So I just want to mention that my name is Monta Welch. I don't think I've necessarily introduced myself, so I want to start with that and say that over 10 years of activism, I've founded several organizations, and they still exist and are doing, you know, different services in the community such as they were intended. And so the latest one of the groups I've founded now is the Take Back Elections. And actually, this is something I started back when Arizona, their primary blew up. I said, we've got to do something. And like a lot of folks, I'm sure there were many calls to the Carter Center, but we ended up, I spoke to the director of the Carter Center, and after speaking with him, he explained that we really, in order for them to oversee our elections, we would have to have a uniform protocol across the nation, and that we absolutely don't have, and we're well aware of that in the election reform community. So that's one of the issues that we think needs to be addressed with a comprehensive and a unified approach, because we feel that while we can certainly put some Band-Aids on temporarily if that's the best we can get around to, we still need a reform for the whole process, because I know some people have been wanting to restore the Voting Rights Act, and which it needs. We need that. And some people are wanting to work on how do we cast and count our ballots, and absolutely we need that. And then we have problems with the media, so we need to deal with those kinds of things. How do we handle our debates and you know, equal time on the media, those kinds of things. And how do we finance our elections? What are some of those problems? So we feel like we really need an overhaul, basically. And so, Kate, if you could put on the introduction and strategy to what we're trying to do on the screen, that would be awesome. And it's, I'm not sure if people, there we go. And so while she's pulling that up, I'll just kind of begin to summarize it for you, which basically is the approach that we need, that I was describing, why we came up with that as far as like the discussions with the Carter Center. And if we ourselves even decide to do oversight rather than, you know, through the Carter Center, if we felt that that was necessary for ongoing and future elections, at least for a certain time frame, you know, of decades or whatever, we would probably also benefit from this unified approach our own selves. So that's why we feel like we need to do a unified and a comprehensive strategy. And so those are kind of some conversational pieces of information as to why we have taken the strategy and the introduction that we have. I know that we also do have on the Take Back Elections site, we have posted the introduction and strategy language that Kate is looking for right now. We also have our outline posted there, in both in links that you can open, but also in graphics, JPEGs that you can click on and open up. We have also the premise of elections. So maybe, Kate, if you want to, just to move to the outline, if you are able to get the outline to open.
Monica?
Yes?
Do you see the introduction and the strategy?
Actually, I can't.
Yeah.
I'm seeing something different. I'm seeing something completely different.
Okay.
So would you, I basically just discussed that, so I'm not quite sure why my screen is showing. I'm seeing your PDF trying, so I'm not sure what's happening here.
Hang on.
Thank you for your patience, everyone, while we try to, all of us, be able to be seeing the same thing here.
How about that? Do you see it now?
No, does everyone else?
No.
Okay. This worked earlier today.
Always have to practice.
I mean, this is Lulu. I clicked on the introduction strategy link on the Facebook page, and it brought me to an introduction strategy
That's all
document.
it's working
So,
now.
Do you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay.
I have a question.
Okay, great. All right, thanks everyone for your patience.
Can
So
you
while I,
ask can I ask a-
while I was waiting for that, I kind of told you quite a bit about what was on here, so I don't really want to go over it again too much, but basically we define, you know, the area that we're talking about of the states, and you might scroll back up to the top just a tiny bit, Kate. I'll move to that second section in a minute. But our approach, yeah, right here, we will have our language vetted by election integrity activists, by attorneys, friendly legislators, and then eventually this will finally settle on something, and we will accept this comprehensive uniform language as a package, which we believe really should be passed in that full way, because it's kind of like putting Band-Aids on when we need to go into surgery with our election process being in the situation that it's in. So,
Mike, hello. My question is, since it's possible to do it instead of state by state, trying to do a constitutional amendment for all 50 states for federal elections?
what we think is that the nature of where we're at right now is there's nothing going to happen at federal that we want. So the only other option that we have right now is to whittle away at the problem state by state, and gradually, and it kind of talks about this in this language here, gradually as we see the effects of this taking place in state by state, that we can get it passed in, those states will have more fair and honest representative of the people elections and results in their elected officials, which will translate into who is sitting in Washington, D.C. And at some point afterwards, our work will enable us to, we hope, pass something through the federal legislature. But right now, we don't see that that's an option at all. So this is why we feel like we have to take the state-by-state approach. And our for some reason, in order to hold this group chat open, I have a little box in the middle of my page, so it's a little harder for me to read. You might not have that, Kate, but nevertheless, I was going to say if someone wanted to read that, there would be welcome to. Does anyone else see this without a box in the middle of it?
I don't see that.
Okay, there we go. I'll just take the box away and I won't watch the chat. I'll just take care of this part. Just know I'm not going to be seeing the chat, people. So folks, you can, someone else can watch that if there's something, but right now we only have a few of us on, so we can just talk like thank you for your comment, Ted. So this is the approach that we believe in, the strategy that we believe we have to take. And so we will basically put this in state constitutional amendments, state by state, and gradually, once the dynamics have changed, then we will be able to do something at federal and kind of speed it along for the rest of the states that we might have difficulty passing it in anyway, as we gradually shift the table. So that's basically a summary of the introduction and strategy. Sorry, I wasn't able to see that language right at the get-go there, but certainly you can read it on your own and think about that and kind of know what we've been doing and why we've been doing it the way we have. So we do have, I will mention right now, once we complete all this language together, we do have the option of breaking it up into Band-Aids instead of surgery, if you will, and taking parts of it, as long as we go with the unified language and everyone uses the same language, it will move us towards the goal of everyone having the unified approach that we can accomplish other things with, like our own election oversight if we need that in a much easier kind of way. So it does have that as an option, you know, if we need that. And we also do know that if we have to, we can keep the Constitutional Convention on the table, but it would be a last resort kind of a measure. And certainly we would not even dream of calling one in the climate that we're in right now. So it's kind of, it's very much, you know, towards the end of the options and strategy, but
Okay.
on the table. So
I get it.
yeah, we can move on to looking at the overview of the outline. Unless first of all, I would like to ask if anyone else has a comment they'd like to make, or a question or a thought in this introduction and strategy part.
I have a question.
Yes.
Isn't there something, I mean, isn't there a point to having it be different state by state as far as having it be more secure? I mean, I know like the Constitution, I think, alludes to having each state run its own election, even if it's a federal.
You're talking about states' rights? Is that what I hear you saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, certainly people argue, and there is an argument about the states' rights versus the federal Constitution. So I think it's a good advantage for us to take it state by state into the Constitution at each state, and ultimately, you know, the federal legislation, so that in many states it will hopefully, as we move through this process with some success, and there's also a strategy to that, to how can we succeed, so I probably should mention that right now before we move on. But to your point, yes, I think that there's an advantage to having it in each state's constitution, quite obviously. And also, though, I know that the way things seem to be going now, federal does trump state, even though people kind of wrestle with this back and forth. At the point where we are now, federal trumps state. So as far as passing this, a strategy for passing this, we would, once we get this in place and have this unified language, we will look at the states strategically. We will look at the situation and we'll say, which state can we pass this in most easily, you know, and get it, just get it through. What we'll do is we'll look at the kind of energy we have to do something like this, and actually with the Women's March and a lot of things, I think we could plug into a tremendous amount of energy. So it kind of depends on a lot of factors at the time once we get this written. And we actually do have a lot of language to throw out into the working group and on the table for vetting and improving for everything you see on the outline. But once we get this language in place and ready to move forward, We can look at the climate at the time. We can check the states that have the direct initiative, the direct ballot initiative. That means that the people can go check with their Secretary of State, do the process. They have a much easier time of getting it on the ballot. We'll start and look at those states first, and we'll decide, do we do it one state? Can we take 2 or 3 states all at once? It kind of depends on, the manpower we have at that time to move it. Because California, for instance, because Adrian and some of you I know are from California, you had a very hard time, and you couldn't, pass some of the labeling, the GMO labeling, even though it was very popular, largely because of what we know we're going to face, all the TV ads and the messaging of the other side who obviously will not want this to pass. So we have to make sure that we don't spread ourselves too thin, and that we all pile on and make sure it does get passed in, at least one state at a time. Maybe we can take 2 or 3 at one time. We don't know yet. But that's a little bit more as to the strategy, as to once we get it written, how can we get it passed, even more so, a different level of strategy. So does anyone else have a comment or a question on this part?
Montha, this is Lulu. I just, I don't completely understand the decision to go for a constitutional amendment instead of legislation. It seems so much more daunting.
My argument for going for a federal government is that it would give, everybody would do everything the same way, and you could get oversight by the Carter administration, and it will stop the idiosyncratic laws and by certain Republican or Democratic governors and secretaries.
Is that Ted?
Yes, that's Ted, and there's kind of 2 things going on here, I think. Lulu, I think what you're saying is 2 things, maybe. First of all, we have state constitutional amendments and we have a federal constitutional amendment. So those are kind of 2 things. Ted's talking about a federal constitutional amendment, and Lulu, I'm not sure if you have a specific or want to talk about both of them, so I can talk about both. But I can tell you that I am from a state that we have successfully passed. I've been part of successfully passing a constitutional amendment. I've also been part of fighting constitutional amendments that we narrowly lost, and I do believe we lost because of the problems we have in our state too, here in Missouri, with the counting part, the thing you've been focusing on, Lulu, that part of it. And so I think that one of the reasons that I believe it's better to put it in the constitutional and in as a constitutional amendment is because when it's less likely that it can be tinkered with and watered down over time by subsequent legislatures. It kind of protects it and makes it stronger. And yes, maybe it's more daunting, but honestly, I think especially in this climate where no matter what side you're on, you're at least hearing, well, Russia's, messing with our elections. So I think in a way that we have a really good climate to pass something like this kind of across the board. If we can put something good together, I think that there would be a lot of support across the board, actually. And I can tell you, yes, it's a big process to pass something with the constitutional amendment in state by state. And I'm not going to talk about federal because that's huge. And I wouldn't even try it at federal right now. Our approach and strategy is to go state by state first. And it's really only, go ahead.
What year are you hoping to get this on the ballot for? 2017?
What we're trying to do is bake this cake as fast as we can, but not mess it up. That's basically what we're trying to do. And we really don't, we need to have as many people rolling up their sleeves to work on this. Lulu, you're doing a great job doing a lot of vetting on that part that you're looking at. We have all the different parts. So the more people we can get working on these different parts, and I have some working groups that we've been setting up. One of them is, Ted is in it. It deals with the voter concerns, basically. So that's a working group going right now, and Lulu has been doing this. So, and we actually have a protocol written out that we sort of just need to see what the scanning machinery looks like, to see whether we go, you know, how we go. Just like your call today, Lulu, you know, was trying to figure out, do we need both hand counts and ballot images? And I think most people feel like we do need both. And we have, we kind of do also. But we also, you know, we haven't made anything firm. We are still in this kicking the tires stage and learning about these different kinds of imaging types of technologies. So the bottom line is that I don't know the answer to the time frame. We just need to work as quickly as we can, get the best practices hammered out, try to move something, a big package, because I think that we have a climate right now that we could move a big package. A lot of people agree the media is all messed up, and that's not fair. A lot of people are all up in the air about Citizens United and the funding of our elections. And so I think that if there ever was a time that we could pass something like this, this would be it.
I'm just concerned that if we make it the big package, that there might be people that don't vote for it because there's just one part of it that they don't like. And also there are certain things.
That's an option.
There are certain, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think your point is I understand what your point is. And again, when we're done here and we can talk about this and think about it, we don't have to have a decision tonight. And what either of us say or think doesn't have to be what it ends up being. As long as we can get our work done, we can have a full and complete package at the end. We can try that, and if it doesn't work in a state or two, then we can go to breaking it up into the different Band-Aids to address what you're saying, Lux, as far as. But even sometimes when you take it down into that kind of a level, sometimes the point that you're making can even go that way too. I think though, we can think about that. That is the one big, there's two things about it. Do we get the election community on board for a big thing, or do we have, you know, these smaller Band-Aids and try to pass a bunch of those things? And I think that it might be worth it to try in at least one state and see how it goes. I think that that's doable with the kind of energy that we have around our elections right now.
Can I say something?
But isn't it different in different states? Like, there are things that, like California, they don't do the voting machines that are so easy to be tampered with. Oregon, they have automatic registration when you turn 18. New York, you had to register in October for a vote in April. So each state already has different things that would not be appropriate, or like Massachusetts has ranked choice voting, I think, you know, that, and California, I think. So not every state needs every part of this bill, and in some places, parts of it have already passed.
So is
it
this,
just seems to me,
Lux, is this Lux that Lux, is that you speaking?
No, it's Tara. I also live in California.
Oh, okay.
And I found out about this on the MeWe electionjustice.org.
Okay, Tara, thank you for your points. We kind of, what we are trying to say, and I don't know if you were at the earlier part of the meeting, but a unified language, and we all have the same process all across the nation. To think about it this way, yes, people will argue, and, you know, we'll all say, well, you know, can we ever get on the same page? There's so many different ways to count a ballot, you know, ranked choice or range voting, or, you know, first past the post and all the different ones, you know. So I hear what you're saying. At the same time as we need to kind of, I guess you would say, sell this idea to people by letting them understand that wouldn't we want a best choice if there, or a best practice rather, if there was something that the majority of the people, and that's what elections are all about, even in passing something like this, do the majority of the people think that whatever the reasons that we're going to give and pitch this to them with, do they think that those reasons are good enough for whatever they have, whether it's new, something new they have or something old they have, but whatever it is, are they, do they think that this is a good enough improvement that they think it will do what we're designing it to do, you know, give us fair and transparent and verifiable elections. And so I guess that's the question. How do we sell it to other people more than anything, really? And so that's really another part of the strategy. It's knowing what people are going to have a problem with ahead of time, you know, and having a good message and a good reason for them to consider this in spite of the points you're bringing up, Tara. Does that make
So,
sense?
Monta, this is Lulu. What state were you thinking of starting in?
Right now, there's about, I don't have the answer completely. I had narrowed it down a few weeks, maybe not a few weeks, maybe a few months ago, actually. I was looking at that question. And we have about 24 states that have a direct ballot initiative process. And so I would look at the states again at that time, once we get our language together here. And I would take things into consideration like size of the state, for instance. I mean, California is really progressive, but it's big. And yes, you know, a lot of people are all over California. And again, like I mentioned, California wasn't able to, California was not able to pass the GMO labeling bill, just as a, for example, even though it was very popular. So we have to look at the state that we might want to, might be able to get this passed, that we would have our, like exit polls. We would do our own exit polls. We would do everything we could to make sure we could get a fair election just to get this passed, because we know that wherever we started, it's going to be something that the opposition, certainly the powers that be, are not going to want to succeed. So that would be.
Hello?
And I think you also have to be concerned about the possibility that the existing system would be rigged against this referendum.
That's what I was saying. That's what I mean. We would have to
I
have.
thought you were implying it, but you didn't sort of come quite out and say that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a serious challenge, actually.
It is, and it's a serious challenge to anything that we do, including if we take it in small batches. You know what I'm saying?
Hello?
We're
Yeah, but
just
if we
dealing
take
with
it
that
in
no matter
small
what.
batches-
So,
If we
Can you guys
take
hear
it
me?
in small batches, it'll be harder for them to defeat every single, you know, like if, let's say we have 8 initiatives in California, they're going to have a hard time spending their money wisely and deciding which ones are more important. Do we want to have same-day registration? Is that more dangerous than something else that might be a separate initiative? But if we give them one target, then they're going to throw all their money at that target, and it'll be that much easier to defeat this thing, which is really separate things that need to be addressed. And putting it all under one umbrella, I think, makes us more likely to fail than if it's separated out into the many, many different things that need to be fixed.
so I think that I believe that what we can simply do is have one test run. Maybe you might be exactly right, but we won't know for sure till we try. And if we try and we get all of this really great stuff in place, I think that state is really going to have a nice turnaround, and other states that would want this. I believe that we're in a majority as long as we don't fuss too much among ourselves, which is always a problem on our side of the fence. But anyway, I do acknowledge what you're saying, and I agree that it is something that as we go along, we can each be thinking about, mulling over, and seeing, is there a way that we can language this to, we're going to have to language it to sell it no matter which route we take, and we still have time to decide how to do it. In the meantime, we're going to write the best language, and we can either take it in small batches or we can take it as a whole. So we can all be thinking about that, because I do respect and take your thoughts, and we've thought of it, of course, ourselves too, trying to figure out how best to do this. But I do want to assure you that that's part of our process here. Again, we're all trying to figure out how can we do this and get the most out of what we need to do. We obviously have a tremendous problem, and no matter what we do legislatively, it's going to be difficult. So I want to move on if we can, unless anyone else has. I know I thank people for using the chat. You can record your thoughts there as well, so that we can kind of get through all the things we wanted to. We're going to just try to do a quick review of the outline, if Kate would want to put that up. While she's getting that on the screen, I will say that the outline is open to revisions, as I mentioned earlier. And as I was kind of looking through some of it, I believe we certainly can make note of some revisions even as we go, possibly. But there, obviously, yes, it's a big topic, a complete comprehensive reform. So we organized it in all the things that happened before and leading up to an election year process. And then we organized it into what things happen on the day of the election. And then we organized it into things that happen after an election. So this first part is about how all the things we kind of need to get in place before we then kind of have things ready to go under this new system. So the premise of elections actually is this, let's see here. Okay, this is our entire outline. Okay, the first part is the premise of elections, a voter holiday, equal funding, equal media exposure, equal ballot access. These will remove a two-party power when we get these kinds of things in place. Campaign finance reform helps to remove effects of Citizens United. We'll probably have a challenge on that. We can be considering that that's likely, and we have to be creative in how we write our language and consider our strategies in that area. I would like to assure people we're going to be looking at existing language and other organizations that might be working on these things, try to partner and ally with them, certainly to get things passed. But, if they believe that their issues are also part of this, obviously we just need to build, a bigger collective of people who want to move this forward. Then we have campaigns for candidates and also ballot referendums, and those will have funding, public monies, and we'll discuss how can we get that done. Abolish the 12th Amendment, and obviously there are people working on that right now and having some success, but we think we'll probably have something in here just in case that should come up at all. Then we want to ask the question of, when we design this, how much of the vote is going to be required by a candidate in order to actually win an election and not have to either have a recount of, depending on what kind of a ballot style that we cast, or maybe, have an automatic election automatically called a re-election or a revote. Then citizens oversight at the debate in town hall meetings. How do we deal with the media? We're going to kind of take these things out of the media's hands to some degree and make it like a restriction within their FCC license that they have to do X, Y, and Z in order to get their FCC license, so that we can, we the people can be in charge of these debates in town halls, but the media has to be the platform for them, and media has to, you know, give all the candidates equal time, that, or reasonably equal time, that sort of thing. So those kinds of things will be in those areas. Redrawing district lines, like the gerrymandering, would be addressed. One of the ideas that we are going to throw out there is that when legislators draw the lines, then it has to go to a vote of the people to be approved, or there might be some other good idea people would have. So those are some things that, excuse me, let's see here, as this is moving, let's see. So number 9 here, limit the length of the campaigns and endorsement limitations, like for instance, sitting elected officials of high rank would maybe be forbidden to, in an election cycle, endorse someone. Those are things that we're going to be considering. And again, you know, everyone has the ability to give their views on this. Write-in candidate rules, what are those going to be? We obviously want to make it easy, but, you know, some kind of requirements. Use of primary state caucuses, that's something we talked about a little bit on our Facebook group. That was an interesting conversation. And so we kind of had a suggestion there for that, but those again will be kind of finalized at some future point as we be thinking about all this. And you can scroll again a little bit now, Kate. So in our outline draft,
Sorry.
I think we're into going on to what happens on the voting day, maybe? No, we're still into prior to elections, okay. Voter registration is automatic. We'll be discussing that. Same day registration would be available. And we're going to be talking about all those voter issues. Obviously, you know, someone can't come in and just say, I want a ballot without even telling you what their name is. And having some kind of, like, I know some states say that you can bring in a bill that is sent to your residence. Other states, there was someone I hope is on the call here who suggested that we could have people be authorized their photo IDs right there at the polling place if they have some kind of an identifying piece of information that goes along with walking in and saying, I'm so-and-so, you know, anything at all, basically, that, you know, might be acceptable. Maybe not anything at all, but something that we would discuss in this group. And we're actually discussing this right now in the working group. What would be the okay things that would not place an undue hardship to allow people to vote, but with some kind of ability to identify people in an accurate kind of way that seems fair. We're also looking in that group right now, and it's not on here, but it's part of this discussion, you know, the whole problem with the cross-check, you know, thing that's been going on. Offenders would be allowed oversight of purged rolls, no party access to public rolls to purge the voter rolls, and people would do that themselves on some kind of a systematic approach that we would put together, a protocol like checking, you know, the death records and taking people off and checking, you know, when people turn a certain age, you know, automatically registering them if that's how we decide. Sample ballots, it's a part of educating people, helping them know where they're supposed to go to their poll. It's not going to be a surprise. And that would happen a few weeks before the election. You know, that all of that is up for some tweaking, but that helps people to, you know, be alerted, elections coming up, kind of, you know, become a more informed voter. ballot access in all 50 states to include all the parties. They're just automatically on. You don't have to really have, or maybe they have some small requirements, but nothing extreme. Write-in candidates would be good. You know, it's all automatically accepted. Voters can register there. Again, I mentioned this earlier, but same-day registration at the poll. The citizens access via the ballot initiative and referendum, because not every state has that. Like I mentioned before, only 24 states have the ballot initiative, and some have a combination of direct and indirect, and some have referendum. So there's a little bit of differences there, and we would want to give the public full access. So we would include in this that it would just be automatic. Every state would have the citizens be able to put a question on the ballot. And then number 7, ranked choice, or we could have maybe range voting, or any number of different possible things. And Lulu, that's kind of one of the things you're looking at as well. Another thing I haven't really heard people talking about though yet in that category is we might have an automatic runoff election, under certain kinds of things that would trigger that. So these are just different possibilities. The ballot uniformity in part 3 deals with the ballot and how that needs to be also uniform, just a basic template, and that everyone would use sort of this design that would just, we kind of already have some language for how it could look. It would be printed at a certain print shop, and from that point on to the point that it's stored long term, there would have to be in place strong chain of custody requirements, filming, certain kind of secure storage, etc. Trackable numbers on the ballots with tear-off receipts, and those would also be, we're including the scanning feature, the ballot imaging that you're talking about, Lulu. Ballot scans would become public domain, so that yes, people could have the citizen counters as backup. And then again, secure transport and storage with the human oversight and continuous filming of the process of what goes on with these ballots. No provisional ballots, because basically people can just get any ballot that they want. If they're a no party preference person, they don't really, we can kind of work this out, because if they are a no party preference person, in one of the states, I believe it's Vermont, you can just go, or no, it's New Hampshire, you can go in and change your party that when you walk in, and change your party again when you walk out. So it's kind of an open primary situation. I know some people feel that they don't like open primaries. Ted, you were mentioning that because of the real, I liked your term. I don't really like the term, but it's accurate. The blood sport of politics in some of these places is really intense. But those are things that we'll have hearty discussions over before we land on something. The voting process itself, the voting day would be a holiday for primaries and general elections. Voters can register again at the poll. The open voting, again, scan machines, uniform across the nation, whatever we decide would be uniform. And so we would, all these things we're putting in place before the elections will then appear here, because that's where we're going to be using what we've laid out. So it's kind of a repeat here. So I'm going to kind of let us move along. Then something else that I know we didn't mention so far is at the polls, the polling places would be the state governments would be held responsible if the polling places fall too short and cause excessive lines, therefore voter suppression. So the number of polling places will be kind of laid out within a certain kind of range that they would be required to provide. And in addition to that, central polling locations would also be provided in case it was difficult for you to vote at your poll for any reason that was assigned to you. There'd be at least one or several, depending on the size or density of any voting locale. That would be a central location where anyone from any area or designated other different poll, they could all vote at a central polling location. That would
I have a question.
yes.
Are you addressing that there shouldn't be limits on early voting? Like, remember they made it that churches couldn't bring their congregations on the Sunday before Election Day? Do you have anything about that?
I suspect that's in our outline here in terms of ways of voting, but I haven't looked at this outline for a while. But the answer to your question is yes. The when you can vote question, early voting, how you can vote, voting by mail is a big issue. So early voting, absentee voting, voting by mail, those kinds of things are going to be hearty discussions. And yes, they are in our purview. They should probably be here somewhere on this outline. As I said, I haven't memorized it. As you can see, it's long and I haven't looked at it in a while. So again, moving along, the exit polls would be something that we feel are important that we should provide ourselves. So we would want to, we have kind of a thought about getting citizens engaged in providing these roles of being an exit poll person or a trained poll worker, trained hand count poll worker, or a trained worker in the first, part of it, the different things that need to be performed. But exit polls would be among those things that need to be performed. So we can move along, but we do feel that we should do some of those ourselves. Maybe they would even be filmed, various kinds of things that will all be discussed in that section.
What
Yes.
problems do you have with exit? What problems do you have with exit polls? What's the issue there? I'm not familiar with it.
Well, the issue with that is that right now the media is really are the only people who perform the exit polls, and a lot of people don't trust the media, and they've sort of shown themselves in this last year or so that that's probably a good thing that we don't. So we
Actually, the media, excuse me. Actually, the media does not perform the exit poll. There's a private group that does. And the media just picks them up. They hire outside
The media hires
contractors
them.
to do it.
Yeah, the media is involved, and I do know that you're right, that there is another group or entity that interfaces with the media in that whole discussion, and yes, that is accurate. But nevertheless, we don't trust that whole process, and we shouldn't, I don't believe, when you learn more in depth about it. So I believe that what we need is to have our own citizen exit polls being taken, and probably some filming of how that goes. And then the last part would be after Election Day. And then we do believe, and I see that we probably can revise some things on our outline, and any ideas that you have that you don't think we've got in the outline or in our purview, please type them into the chat. We'll be looking at those comments and suggestions for changing or revising anything when we're done, and we'll make some revisions. You can also comment in the outline pinned post on things on the outline that you see that you would want to, if you have any thing that comes to you and we're not in the meeting now, you can also post at the Take Back Elections group. So post here now in the chat if you're thinking of something, or later in the Take Back Elections group. But now then, to finish the outline, after Election Day, I'll just comment that in our in our protocol, we have the hand counts that take place at the polls. The ballots would not leave the polls until the hand counts are done. And yes, for highly dense locations, we're at least looking at potential percentages of a vote. Excuse me, I'm having my phone ring in the background. We're just going to ignore that. Well, maybe not. Hang on. I'm just going to hang up because I don't have time for answering machine. Okay. Let's see. I just wanted to explain that, can someone pipe up where I was at all of a sudden? That just made my mind lose my train of thought there. Oh, yes, we will be having the ballots counted at the polls, and for the dense voting areas, we would try to reduce the density by, having more poll locations and other kinds of things. But aside from that, we would increase the count teams, the number of teams counting to handle certain, volume. And on top of that, we would also consider if there's a certain percentage of polls that would be counted. I know you discussed this a little bit today, Lulu. And then, of course, everything would be, in that case, all ballot images, but also maybe like even up to 50% or 30% or whatever. That is a conversation that we'll be having on this. And so we could consider a range in that area.
Yeah.
And also, it would be a surprise. No poll would ever know if they were going to be the ones that would be, hand counted, because they're all going to know how to do it, and they're all going to be prepared, and we're all going to have trained, hand count teams, and they will be the gold standard of 4, but we have ours instead of 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, like I believe that was Virginia Martin. Ours is to have 1 Democrat, 1 Republican, and the other 2 seats would be mixed, from the other parties, even including nonpartisans or persons who were no party preference if they didn't have a party. So it would be we haven't figured out how we would select it that way, but those remaining spots would not be Democrat or Republican. It would be divided up a different kind of way. But so the ballots would be counted in as many places as possible at 100%, along with the backup of the ballot imaging, whatever technology or filming or whatever we feel is the most secure or fully secure that we land on with as an election integrity community.
Anta?
Yes?
I have a question. This is Brent Turner.
Hi, Brent.
Hi, how are you?
Great, thank you. Thanks for being on.
You have a couple things before we move on. One, I noticed you're talking about hand counting, and I just want to highlight that if you're considering ranked choice voting, that ranked choice takes hand counting pretty much off the table.
Yes, it's true.
As they conflict with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I'm noting is the issue where it says audits are rarely needed due to capacity. I would make a case that the audits are still a necessity, and I like the fact you're doing basically 100% audits at the precinct level, and they're good for a deterrent. So I would recommend sticking with as heavy of an audit protocol as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, I have an issue when you're using scanners of any sort. If you're not hand counting, then the scanners, I think you necessarily should have general public license, open source requisite, because you don't want any corporate controlled software anywhere near an electronic system. So when I see the words open source results data available to all, that is a little bit of a, you're using the term open source, but actually the term open source has exact meaning in election reform, as that relates to the software code.
Yes, you're absolutely right. We do need to revise this because we weren't using the correct terminology at that time. So thank you for pointing that out with the open source and the audits. We are happy to have a robust program for them, but we kind of feel that with the system in place and the backup with the citizens sort of backing up with their audits with this ballot imaging, which might be a better word, than open source, but various ways that we get this to the citizen overseers for the count, as well as the hand counting, which both things would be taking place. And the way we would do the hand counting is in and of itself an audit of its own self, basically. So we're thinking that when all these things are in place, that it's likely audits would be rarely needed. But yes, we should definitely, I agree with you, have you know, a robust program for doing so as much as anyone would want or feel is necessary.
Yes,
So
we
thank you.
we see when conversations omit open source software from the security protocols, that the concern is that is someone trying to, and not that you're doing that, but wherever the information is coming from, when people start talking about ballot imaging and hand counting and leave the election system software omitted, that is a red flag. And we always bring it back to saying, if you are utilizing technology, which currently in the United States we do, and there's no sign of that disappearing, unless there is a constitutional amendment or something, that we always want the words general public license, open source clearly stated, and that corporate owned software should be illegal.
So we'd be happy to, you know, consider, again, this is what we're doing is wanting to make some revisions to the outline. And so when we can get this
revision taken care of, we'll consider all the language you're suggesting there.
Manta, yeah.
I'm sorry, my phone is hung up. I don't know why I'm echoing. I don't know what to
You've got
say.
an echo happening, Manta. There's an echo happening on your part. So
I don't know what to say because nothing is different now than what I've done from the beginning.
you have your phone on? Is it off?
No, my phone is not on.
I don't know. It's weird.
I'm very sorry, everyone, for some of this background problem. Let's see. I don't know if there's a way I can fix this echo. My phone is not on. In fact, I feel like I'm plugging it over there just to make sure. Does that help? No. Okay, everyone. I don't know what to do here. Is this extremely
It's
pretty bad?
It's pretty hard to listen to. I'm wondering if you could sign off and sign back on.
I could try that.
Yeah.
While I do that, Kate, why don't you finish up with what happens after Election Day and put up the last thing that we're going to discuss, which was a little bit more detail about the premise of elections, while I sign off and sign back on again.
Okay.
I'll try to leave the meeting, but I remember trying that and it didn't let me last time we did that. I'll see.
I guess the last thing that was discussed was the open source.
On your end, can you can you, there we go. All right. I'll be back, hopefully.
Okay. All right, so we were discussing the open source, and are there any other comments about the open source? So reviewing exit polls is something that is a big part of, oh, I have an echo as well. Huh. It's not just Manta.
No, you did.
Manta, are you back on? I see you. I don't know what to do. I've got an echo also. Some kind of strange thing in the software.
Should have used open source.
That's the problem. Does anyone want to say anything about the exit poll? I'm not an expert on exit polling.
I'll chime in a little. You know, I contacted the exit polling company that I think was alluded to earlier, and yes, indeed, they are privatized and they are an interesting bunch. There's a tremendous amount of conversation and argument. Historically, exit polls have been more accurate than any other type of polls. I happen to be of the school that none of them can really be trusted, but I'm of the school to not trust anything. So people have their different feelings about it, but usually when exit polls are dramatically off, they can be indicia of bad systems. That being said, you just have to take them with a little grain of salt.
Yeah, hello, this is Ted in Louisville. And I'm a big fan of exit polls because they give you data like demographic data and issue data.
Assuming the people being polled are telling the truth, which they tend to, but not always, right, Ted?
That's the question. I think of the truth and they vote.
Okay, so Monta's still not on. Should we move on to the audits? We said they're rarely needed, but I had some thoughts about this. In California, we sort of spot checked the ballots. 1% of the ballots are checked against the count. And I think that might be a good idea as a regular practice to double check 1% of the ballots.
Is there any provision that the ballot counting be visible to the people that are there to audit it? Because I had friends that went to California counting and they purposely put the people that so that you couldn't see what they were doing on their table and made it so that the auditors couldn't see anything.
Well, what we have in mind with this setup, and it's all still up for negotiation, is that we would have everything videotaped, or a video would be going on at all times, so it would be recorded. I think
well, then what's having people there in the room to audit if there isn't a provision that they have to be able to see what is going on?
Yeah, we haven't gotten into the specifics on auditing, but in terms of the hand counting of the votes, the intention was to have people observing from, 2 or 3 people observing and have it all videotaped at the same time. So shall we move on to announce the special runoff elections? I don't know what Monta had in mind here, actually. This is one area that I'm not sure I know anything about. But there were some other things that I wanted to bring up about the overall on this. While Monta and I have been thinking about this, one of the big issues of a broad, comprehensive sweep like this is it's like puzzle pieces. And if you take little tiny referendums and you make little changes, not only is it little Band-Aids, but this whole thing, if you get it to work together, it's much stronger. It's like a machine where it's all working together. And that's part of the argument. I
But
think
my concern is if it's all under one umbrella, then if they file a lawsuit of just about one part, that everything gets held up and nothing gets to be implemented because the whole lawsuit, no matter how much of it's contesting, the entire bill is put on hold. Where if it's all separate, then they would have to contest each separate thing, and they might not contest each separate thing. And what they don't contest, we can start moving and implementing right away.
Yeah, well, I don't know about the legislative part of things. So I think that that's maybe something up for discussion. Maybe we break it into pieces.
Neither is ideal. There's problems in either doing it
I think
separately or all.
so, but I think overall, in general, if we're going to take this big chunk and try and change it, it's going to require a large degree of research to back our reasons why we need to do it in such a way. And I think that at some point we want to put together teams of researchers so that we can point to statistics, point to factual evidence that this needs to happen. This is why, and education goes along with that. If this is to be passed, we need to be educating those who will pass it as well as the general public, so that everyone's up to speed with the issues behind it. So, once we get it.
If it's all, I'm sorry, but I got to keep bringing up all my reasons why this doesn't seem like a good idea. If it's all under one umbrella, I'm picturing the people that would be out there trying to get the signatures. Whereas if you're just saying, are you for same-day registration? Then they can bing, they've got it, and they can sign. But if you have something that you've got like 50 different points, and they're all valid, who's going to sit there and listen to all that?
That is a valid point. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe we do break it up in chunks. I don't know, and I don't understand where Monta is. Now I want to.
A
Hello?
long time ago.
Hello?
Monta, are you back?
Yes, I think so.
Okay,
Yes, I know. Is this Tara again?
It is.
Hi, Tara. I think
Hi.
it is something that people will probably just end up in two camps about. And I don't think anyone really knows a full answer as to if we can pass something comprehensive or not. Yes, you make an excellent point that in a comprehensive thing, there's more things for people to not like, but sometimes I think it's how you present it as much as sometimes I think people will say, I like 80 or 90% of this. And I think that the little bit that I don't like doesn't make me feel that this isn't a better route ultimately, or I'm getting more things this way, and the things that maybe I don't like, maybe they can say, well, I'll try to go make a constitutional amendment and take those out, you know, and will they get it done? I don't know. Is it really better? I don't know. What are the kinds of things you think people aren't going to like, Tara?
No, it's not that I don't think people aren't going to like anything in particular. My concern is that, say they just don't like one part of it, that they might vote against the whole thing. But my real concern is the opposition and what would be the smarter move to get the most passed without opposition. And I just
Right.
feel like if it's all under one umbrella, then they have a really good target and they can go after the whole bill, and they can file a lawsuit. Like, let's say, I don't know, it seems like there's how many separate points? 30? I mean, a lot. There's a lot of issues that need to be addressed, that we want to address. But if, say, the bill passes and then it gets challenged in court, and they're just challenging one part of it, they don't want people to vote on Sunday before the election, the whole bill is stalled, and none of the good parts that nobody objected to are able to be implemented because everything's under this one umbrella. And
Yes,
I'm just
and that's,
concerned.
yeah, that is true. You know, and it is true. I have concerns myself about the financing part and the whole Citizens United and all of that. So we're going to be really careful in that, but that still doesn't make it where someone couldn't challenge any number of areas for any number of reasons. So, you know, ultimately, maybe the community will decide to do what you're saying and make smaller little ships go out across, you know, the harbor there, and we'll just, you know, go the Band-Aid route. I don't know. But I am saying that if we go ahead and at least try to agree on unified language, going the Band-Aid route, I think would be better than many different kinds of things going on here, there, and everywhere. The bottom line, though, is we have to get to a certain level of uniformity to really make it practical at all, doable at all, to do our own, even citizens oversight, much less any entity like a Carter administration, a Carter Center, or, you know, any other kind of entity. So hence the unified approach, and because of unified Band-Aids or unified, you know, surgery, whichever. So
The other part of it, if you do break it up, okay, then the person collecting the signatures isn't having to list 50 different things this bill does, but then they do have separate, all these people are going to have to sign their signature over and over and over again if you break it up too much. So it's a mess either way. I don't really see how either one is the perfect solution.
I think there's not going to be anything that's a perfect solution. I think everything is going to have some kind of a negative, and I think that I think it's worth giving it a try and seeing if we can get it done. Because if we can, I think, you know, that would be awesome. People would, you know, I think really like that. And if we can be careful how we write certain things, the challenges you mentioned may not be able to hold ground, but we do, especially in that financing area, that is one area that we have to watch out for that. But I do think that if we want to just lightly wind up our call by doing the last part of this, you know, and your concerns are duly noted, and we can post them in the chat as well. But what we might do here is finish up our goal for this meeting, which is to just lightly touch on the language for the premise of elections. If Kate can put that up, that'd be awesome. And then we'll just sort of go over that, and anyone wants to leave any closing thoughts, we'll schedule another meeting. But more, as I, while she's getting that put up, I want to encourage everyone to get involved in a certain area so that we can get this language finished, and we can have a comprehensive approach that we can take in whole and give it a try, or we can go the Band-Aid route, and we'll have some time to think about that. And yet at the same time, we'll be getting the rest of this hammered out also. Like Lulu has been doing a great job of, really educating and working on what are the options, a version of hammering it out on her calls to at least let people express things and consider in the area of what goes on with how do we count our votes and, the oversight for that. So this is the premise of elections, a little bit more language behind that part that fits in the outline. And so general, primary, and special elections, all of those, we would have language that would govern these days, the preliminary days for these elections, the actual day of, and the days following the elections. Those will kind of all be, part of our whole approach. But the general election day we thought should remain because so much might be changing. A lot of things could be changing. We thought some stability and all the reasons it was chosen in the first place. So now people might want to do something different, and they're welcome. We can certainly discuss this, but we're putting out Tuesday like we're normally expect of the second Tuesday of November, and every fourth year that would be the presidential election. And then of course, on the every second year rather than instead of the fourth year would be then our Congress, as well as the fourth year. So that kind of cycle we felt like we should probably just stick with. But again, everything is open for discussion and hammering out in our small groups that will work on these things. Obviously, we are mentioning again the voter holiday, in which will not obvious, everyone won't be able to take off work, but those who can't take off work should be, given a significant amount of time, 3 hours at least, to go cast their votes. But we hope that the long lines, all of that will be taken care of. So, 3 hours ought to be plenty. But those who do get a holiday, that would give us some pool of people to staff these citizen, either volunteer or, very small amount of remuneration, kind of similar to a jury duty kind of thing. Someone has mentioned that as a suggestion as well that we thought, holds some merit to consider as how we cover some of the jobs that are going to need to be covered when we have multiple count teams, when we have our own exit poll teams, et cetera. So that will give us at least a pool of people that will be off work for those things, as well as just kind of making it, special that we all go and vote. So the additional elections for annual calendars would be primaries and even special elections, other than these general election days, and those will be pretty much handled like they have been, and we can look at language to kind of put that in black and white. But those will be, the calendars will pretty much remain the same for primaries, and then special elections can be called according to what maybe some areas we can have some flexibility, whatever the states do in calling their special elections is probably something that could be a little more flexible. And then the last part in this thing that we're trying to accomplish today is a conversation about these caucuses, because that's one of the ways that the primaries are handled rather than, voting at a polling place. And so that's a conversation that we'll want to discuss in some smaller groups how do we handle that? And I'll just read what it says here. Should these party caucuses, should political party caucuses acting for some parties as a primary for candidate selection, should they continue? Currently, I believe some party caucuses interface or dovetail with the public primary elections, as in Washington, so we might kind of look more to that, maybe some other states. And then party gatherings, such as caucuses serve for, can always continue as they do and have their party business and meetings and decisions, their platforms, whatever. So in a way, the caucuses, if we changed it to where they all voted at a poll instead of a caucus, there's pros and cons to everything, but we should be thinking about the caucuses because we aren't clear what should be done on that. So that's a place that people could think about and input. But that's pretty much what we wanted to accomplish with the meeting this evening. And if there are any more comments, questions that you'd like to speak up about, we can take those and then wind up our call today. Does anyone have anything they'd like to say?
I only found out about this because I belong to Election Justice on MeWe. So I don't know if you can even see what you have available online. Can you put a link in the MeWe group to so that I can read what these, I don't know what you're calling it. I'm sorry. The
Take Back Elections.
Okay. So is it takebackelections.org?
It is. We don't have a website up yet.
We're working on that.
We have a Facebook page if you're into Facebook at all.
Okay. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So just look for the group Take Back Elections.
So anyone who's
Okay.
not already part of our Take Back Elections group, they're welcome to join in. It's a real working group rather than just I'm curious and I just kind of want to, come. We hope, we're not going to force everyone to work, but we're certainly encouraging and wanting it to be understood as a working group. So thank you all for joining us on the call, and we'll look forward to talking more about the different parts that we're working on and presenting those, and encouraging you to get into our working groups, which we welcome you to join the group and to sign up for one of our working groups. And we'll keep discussing the best approach to get these reforms in place. So thanks, everybody.
Are we gonna be doing another conference call?
Oh yes, we are, but we want to either do bi-weekly or weekly calls, but we'll just put up another invitation soon because we're going to assess, if Sunday evenings work well and what we're going to do with future calls. But we will definitely be having future calls either weekly or bi-weekly. So thank you, everyone, and please join us and roll up your sleeves, and we'll look for you at Take Back Elections on Facebook groups. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.